Welcome to the Farm to School podcast, where you will hear stories of how you thrive and farmers prosper when we learn how to grow, cook, and eat delicious, nutritious local foods in schools across the country.
And the whole wide world. Hey, everybody, we're your hosts. I'm Rick Sherman.
And I'm Michelle Markiston.
So today, we have some special guests in our studio, as we always do. But this time, we're, let me give you a little background. I met these people on a tour of the Chemawa Indian School in Salem, Oregon. Chemawa is operated by the Bureau of Indian Education and has a long history. They were established in the 1870s and is the longest continually ran boarding school for Native students in the U.S. and is one of 4 off-reservation boarding schools for Native students currently. So the students are there not only from all over Oregon, but all over the western parts of the United States. So anyway, the people I met are Casey Kavanagh and Shane Can you say your last name?
Makaravitz.
I didn't know if it was Makaravitz or Makaravitz.
Yeah.
Or thank you for that. So welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Welcome.
So first of all, wanted to talk about Casey. You have a title that is a mile long, and what is it you do? Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and the role you play?
Sure. Yeah, I am the National Nutrition Consultant for Indian Affairs, which is located in the Department of Interior. So that means that I work with both the Bureau of Indian Affairs, who oversees about 80 to 90 detention centers and jails throughout the U.S., and then the Bureau of Indian Education, who oversees 183 schools in 23 states and 2 post-secondary institutions. So it is pretty busy. However, my focus is mainly on about 4 or 5 schools and then about 4 or 5 detention centers, as that's been the focus of our Indigenous Food Hub initiative, which is to try to increase more Indigenous foods that are offered to both the inmates and the students at these facilities, to increase nutrition education around these foods, and also to help cooks kind of figure out how to add these foods to their meals and their menus. And also I coordinate a Cooks Council, which has been really useful and very profound in this work, as it helps our cooks to consult with each other on recipes, menu ideas, and student feedback and acceptability of these foods.
So that's like 3 episodes worth right there, all the stuff she does. And we're gonna circle back about the First Foods initiative. We want to talk about that. But you're supporting cooks. And so we have a chef with us today, Shane. So what is your official title and role at Chemawa?
I am the food service manager at Chemawa Indian School, and I make all the menus to fall in line with the ODE. I make all the production sheets, prep sheets, weekly prep sheets, so that staff know what needs to be prepped, how much needs to be prepped. Also, I do meet with student council, the rec coordinator, and we go through weekly activities. So all the students at the school get all their food from the kitchen.
Yeah.
So they have
breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because it's a boarding school.
Yes, but they also do trips, educational trips to other colleges, coast trips, Silver Creek Falls, and we do barbecues. We go with them, barbecue food for them.
Nice.
Sack lunches, snacks for all their sport events, and we cook like their prom dinners, and when they have dances, we cater those as well.
So how did you get your start doing what you're doing now, Shane?
Well, I started out as an intermittent food service. I had some family that worked in the kitchen, and they let me know they were hiring. I applied, went through the process, got hired, worked hard for 2 years. A full-time position came open. I took that food service, worked that for about 11 years, kind of learned the in and outs of the kitchen, was interested with the food because at that point in time, we were serving 350, 400 students. So it was kind of mind-boggling to me seeing 50, 60 pounds of hamburger in a big kettle. That was like a lot of product.
Yeah.
and asked questions here and there with the cooks, shadowed them. I also shut down the kitchen a couple times when the cooks had leave. Shut the kitchen down. A cook's position opened up. I thought I could do it. I was confident I could do it. Applied for it.
When was that? How long ago was that?
I would say about 8 years ago.
Okay.
8 years ago.
Yeah.
Started cooking. Now I fell in love with the cooking right there.
Well, I've heard from my compatriots who come and do the reviews that you're doing a fantastic job, and they have nothing but good things to say. And I just want to talk about the school a little bit. When I was there, I was blown away by that place. I was instantly so jealous of. I mean, I love my school. I went to my alma mater, the Fighting Seahawks of Anacortes, but I wish I went to school at Chemawa. There was a lot going there when they had their, because they're there 24/7. It's a boarding school, so you have to keep them busy and entertained. So they had your own movie theater, they had their student center with games and pool tables. But I was so impressed that the people that ran it weren't people that you hired off the street, but it was the students in a great majority, right? You trained them how to operate to give them some real life skills. So can you guys tell me about that some more?
Yeah. So we do have students who apply to work in the kitchen, and a lot of the times we get them to apply through, they have a detail. It's like a chore that they have to come and help serve an hour a month, and it rotates through the dorms. So once we get the kids in, we kind of explain what needs to be done, show them how to do it. And by the end of their detail, some kids like it or they work really good, and we let them know, like, oh, you did a great job, We do accept applications if you want to apply, and that's how we get most of our workers. They apply to make a little extra money. And then from there, we talk to them on goals of something they'd like to learn in the kitchen. Some of them might not know how to cut vegetables up for a salad bar. So we pair them up with the salad prep person, give them tools to prep out the salad bar. If they have a goal to cook, we pair them up with the cook who, as he's cooking the meal, will explain to him what they're doing. And in some cases, let them do some cooking too.
Yeah.
So it's like a life experience.
Okay. Well, sounds good.
Yeah, I think they allow them to sort of, have these opportunities that you wouldn't see at other, schools that are not residential. They have a student store, and the students run their own store. They sell coffee drinks sometimes in the morning. They will sell Chemawa gear, their sweaters and things like that in the store. And then when we toured the dorms, I think that you had seen, they said they are detailed to clean their rooms. That is a requirement that they have to keep their rooms clean. So they learn a lot of these life lessons there that you don't get, in regular school. And because it's 24/7, they're there all the time. And so they know that's their community. They're building that school. They know they're going to be, they work a lot with the staff, and the staff really give them great opportunities. And I think it builds so much independence in that kind of atmosphere where they have a bigger role to kind of uphold this environment and really contribute to it.
Well, the students we met, from my perspective, they looked like they were beaming with pride. They really loved the place, and it really showed. And it just, from the staff, the students, and everything, it was just such a neat place.
Yeah, and I think that comes also with the history of the school. Like you said, it's been around for a long time. So the history is a lot of those students, their parents went there, their siblings, their aunts, their even grandparents went there. Wow. Considering it's been around since 1870, but 1885 in Salem, that's a long time that it's been there. And again, they're coming from all over the nation. So when I was talking with Shane just the other day, he was saying, yeah, sometimes the students will say, do you know, so-and-so, that was my uncle, or do you know, so-and-so, that was, my relative. And so I think that also brings on that pride and, a legacy that they've been going there for generations.
Yeah. So I've worked in the kitchen for 23 years. So
wow.
when there are kids serving, they'll be like, how long have you worked here? Be like 23 years or 20 years, at the time. And then.
Did you start when you were like 5?
But they'll be like, oh, my dad went here. His name, and asking me. And in some cases, I do remember them students working in the kitchen or during even graduation time. When they're graduating, they bring their family in, and they'll be like, oh, this is my little sister. They're coming here next year.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
You had mentioned a process for getting student feedback into foods, like Cooks Council, Indigenous food hubs. Can you tell us more about the student feedback component?
Yeah, so during like student council meetings, or even just when we're serving food, we talk to the kids and ask them, what's your favorite food? What type of food do you have at home? And then when we also ask student council, they go back and get feedback from the students. I ask them, what kind of foods would you guys like to see on the menu? Just anything I can get them into the kitchen to eat. And then when they give me, and I also let them know too, that if we don't have the recipe or if they wanted to come in and help make it, that's an option too. Some of these meals we do during dinner time that we don't claim, so we can have the kids come in and they can help make the meal. And in some cases they serve some, or if we get it done before dinner, we'll give them a portion or so to take back to the dorm with them. And they take pride in that, and then you can see it in them when they're leaving. Like, oh, I completed something, and it's a win-win for both of us. It's like a bonding experience between like the staff and the students, and then giving them a piece of home as well. Serving something that they usually have at home.
What kind of meals is that?
Well, we've done mutton stew, which is like lamb.
Lamb, yeah.
Just a fry bread, making fry bread. Some of the kids will be like, you need to add more of this to your fry bread, So we invite them into the kitchen, like, come and show us, And like I was telling Casey, we had a girl come in, but it's like, oh, you need 5 handfuls of this, But by the end of the process, she had made like a batch of, I believe, 140 fry bread, and it came out very well. So we wrote that recipe down.
So that's what you mean, 5 handfuls, meaning that's the
Portion.
the measurement.
Yeah, the measurement.
Okay.
Because I'm like, we're gonna write this down so that we can start using it, And then it's like they're tasting it before you mix it up and everything, and they're like, more salt, So
I think you had mentioned once elk. You have what else?
And bison. You have
elk,
some,
bison, rainbow trout, salmon, root vegetables, beets, carrots.
This is a good segue into I told you, Casey, I'd get back to your subject of first foods, and it's been my experience when talking to tribal members around Oregon that food isn't just food sometimes, but food can be sacred. It could be something that's taught to students that means something to them. And so when there's a lot of things being kicked around like food sovereignty and first foods, and what does some of that mean to you? And you can just tell about your initiative. Sure.
First foods are the foods that were here before settlers came. So they were the foods that sustained a lot of, tribes for thousands of years. And 60% of our foods in, our current diet and Americans' diets were first food. So we've, become accustomed to them, and we don't think of, oh, I've never had that before, because we're used to eating those foods. But there's some of the lesser known first foods that I guess settlers didn't really take to, or they weren't as popular, I think. So those are the foods that we're trying to really focus on and bring those back to the schools. And celebrate them so that students are excited to try them. So that could be like the elk and the bison, deer. We're celebrating juniper ash right now. That's our harvest of the month. So that's kind of more of a Southwestern type food. And how that's prepared is that people go out, they pick their juniper ash, and traditionally you would have to pray, ask the tree, before you take the ash, take it from, the east side. So there's always there's that sort of unknown kind of indigenous knowledge that goes behind this when you're collecting these things, and praying for that while you're collecting it, and thinking of all the good thoughts of you're putting into that food while you're preparing it for your students. There's all of that sort of mindfulness that's kind of, when you take a step back, that's our traditional way. So what you do is you dry out the leaves from the juniper, and then you burn it. And from that ash, you can add that to blue corn products. So traditionally that was added to blue corn products for a lot of tribes in the Southwest. This is your traditional food. So like Hopi, Navajo, Pueblo, they have this often in their diets. And what science has shown is that that was a significant source of calcium. 1 teaspoon of juniper ash is almost equivalent to the 300 milligrams or so that you get from a cup of milk. And it also increases the bioavailability of the other nutrients in the blue corn so that your body can better absorb those nutrients. So for, hundreds and thousands of years, Native people had this knowledge that we didn't know contemporarily until like scientists found, whoa, that's interesting. This is actually a great source of calcium. But we're really trying to celebrate that with our Harvest of the Month this month, and have more blue corn products in the lunch. So some cooks have done more blue corn pancakes or blue corn mush. And that is just so cool. When you are making blue corn mush and you add that juniper ash, it makes the mush from the blue to purple. And as a dietitian, and people know about nutrition, the brighter the color, the more nutrients that food has. So it's just almost like a chemical process that you could see, and it's like, wow, that's really awesome. And you can just tell then that you have much more nutrients in that food. Again, like you said, these foods are sacred. They represented a majority of tribal diets for so long. I know, like, I'm Western Shoshone, so my people were from the Nevada territory, but Shoshone were throughout Oregon, kind of the lower part of Oregon, also in Wyoming and Idaho. And the Shoshone that were kind of more connected to this area, they ate a lot of salmon, and they call them agadagat, which means that salmon is what they're eating. Like aga is salmon and dagat means what you eat, because our tribes named each other kind of by what they ate or their tools. But that like 70 to 80% of their diet was salmon. So you look back at these diets, and I had ancestors that lived to 100 years of age. We had long lives and really healthy people before this major shift, in diet. So we're really trying to, bring these foods back, rebuild that relationship with these students and their ancestral foodways. And actually salmon is our harvest of the month for May. So I've started prepping the cooks at our last meeting. I said, here's some recipes that were used in school lunch. Because that's the other thing too, along with our cooks aren't necessarily native, or they may not have even, grown up with these foods. So we're also trying to get our cooks accustomed to trying these foods. And when we first started this, it was funny because I had some cooks that were saying, I made the mutton or the lamb, but I didn't try it. Yeah. And so we're like, you have to try your own cooking, right? If you're giving it to the students on the line. But now they've all come full circle. They've tried bison, lamb. They're all, very experimental with the foods right now. They're really brave. We recently celebrated sweet potatoes. That was our harvest of the month for March. And we had some cooks that were actually trying sweet potato fry bread, where they use the puree in the fry bread. And they said, wow, we only made 40 of them and they were gone in like 5 minutes. The kids loved them. So they're really just fearless and super brave in how they are, executing this project. It's really fun to see.
Well, that was, so expanding on that whole system, in Oregon, we have a real diversity of food, especially for first foods, just within our state. Like we had whaling was a big thing on the coast, and then there was foraging. I've heard, like wapato and camas greens and camas roots and things like that. And then the salmon you're talking about. So that's just in Oregon. So I can only imagine for the western half of the United States, how do you honor and can you even try to go there to try to bring everybody's cultures in and share that with everybody?
Yeah, it can definitely be difficult. And that's why we're trying to make sure that we do have foods in our Harvest of the Month that represents all the tribes from all the nations. So we do have, like I said, blue corn, or we do actually have blue corn coming up, and also the mutton and the juniper ash. Those have all kind of celebrated the tribes in the Southwest. Salmon, we have strawberries that's going to be on for June. And then sunflowers. So those are, kind of, those were well known in this area. Whaling, I've never actually had whale myself, but I would be really interested to try. Yeah. I would definitely try it if I had the opportunity. But yeah, it's just, the first foods are so diverse. So we actually I think we've come up with a tentative schedule where we can actually keep going with new foods at least for like 3 years. But that is, the barrier is the availability of these foods, because like we said, like these foods are kind of like not as well known or mainstream, like the 60% of the, the foods that are indigenous in our contemporary diet. So they can be harder to get. And we are also trying to make sure we are purchasing from indigenous vendors, if at all possible, like the blue corn or the juniper ash, because we know they collected it the traditional way and things like that. But that is one barrier we're running into, is the availability of these foods. So I hope that even if we just celebrate it as far as like the Camas route, if we just come up with nutrition education and we hang that in our lunchroom and bring attention to it, if we're not able to get it and put it in the menu, I hope that we can at least share the information, and that might increase students' curiosity to try it if they had the opportunity outside of school.
Is this what led you to your work on the Indigenous food hubs?
My work was started at a very young age. I was interested in nutrition from growing up. I grew up with a grandma who had diabetes. So I watched her every day check her blood sugar, inject her insulin. And so that piqued my curiosity, like, what is this that she's doing? And growing up on the reservation, like I said, I'm from the Duck Valley Indian Reservation. So it's in Owyhee, Nevada, and it borders the Idaho-Nevada border. It kind of straddles that line. And so growing up in that reservation community, I saw a lot of elders, struggling with diabetes. I saw amputations, just things that you're like, wow, that's really kind of crazy when you're a kid seeing that. And so I kind of thought like diabetes was a passage of life. And like, I thought, oh, if I can learn how to deal with this at a young age, then, I'm that much further ahead of the game. But going through school, and then also like I was an athlete in high school, and I kind of struggled with body image. So I was like a calorie counter, at an early age. But going to school, I kind of thought, hey, I want to go into diabetes, understanding diabetes and helping people with their weight and nutrition, and kind of figuring out these things that I kind of like, felt like I was kind of figuring out or trying to figure out. So I ended up working for Indian Health Service, and I spent a good 12 years working for Indian Health Service, and mostly in the Southwest. So I worked with a lot of tribes in Arizona, and kind of like also circulated to tribal communities around Phoenix area. And then when COVID hit, it was strange, because they said we can't go out to the communities because we could potentially put them at risk, that was understandable. So I was mostly based at the hospital, but just with like kind of that atmosphere of changing and not being able to go out in the community as much, I decided to kind of take a leap of faith and apply for something outside of dietetics. And then I became a patient advocate for 2 years, and that's what brought me to Oregon. I worked at the Western Oregon Service Unit, which is right next door to Chemawa. They call it Chemawa too. It's the clinic that serves Chemawa Indian School. And then I learned about BIE, and it was never on my radar before. I don't know why, but I was like, wow, there's the school right there. And a lot of people, we kind of worked together, and that's kind of where I met Shane, because I said, hey, I want to help with the diets and the menus, and I'm a dietitian. And he probably was like, who are you? So then later in 2023, I saw that BIE was hiring for a national nutrition consultant. And I thought, wow, okay, that's awesome. Let me apply. And they called me and they said 350 people applied, and we only are interviewing 5. And this was during the interview. They said, you're the last one, and we're going to make our choice. I was like, oh my gosh, wow. Like this is, and it just seemed like, wow, this is like a dream job. And then lo and behold, I kind of stepped into that role, and it has been an amazing journey for sure. It's almost been 2 years. Come August, it will be 2 years that I've been in this position. And overall, I've been in the government for about 16 years.
Wow. Well, they made a good choice. It's so nice to see somebody that loves their job. And like when you say dream job, right? I've said that before too. So it's like, yeah.
Never work a day in my life.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
And then the food hubs themselves, is that an actual physical structure? Is that an online platform? Is that
It's used really loosely. Our idea of the food hub, or kind of when they first came up with this idea, was that they really just wanted, it was really more of that indigenous food hub kind of idea, where they wanted to get more of these indigenous foods on the lunch menus. But along with that, we are trying to increase, knowledge of where is the food coming from? How are you growing the food? And, trying to explore ideas of getting gardens onto school campuses. So out of the sites that we had last year, I want to say at least 3 of them tried gardening. 2 were very successful. And then we also recently started a partnership with the Native American Ag Fund and the Tribal Ag Fellowship, which is kind of their sister organization. And they are supporting our BIE schools and really trying to bring more ag education to schools. We want to get ag teachers. We want to get FFA programs going. We would like to get more of the farm to school, activities. And then taking it kind of to that next level of like, bison to school is kind of one of the conferences or trainings that we're working on right now with USDA that we're hoping to get some of our cooks to this summer. But that's kind of where we realized, like, after we kind of started this work, this is pretty much farm to school. And we really should be tapping into our farm to school state agencies and getting support from the networks because, this is the work that we're doing. So, yeah, it's been really exciting to kind of connect the schools to their state and just see all of the support that's out there for farm to school and all of the opportunities and resources.
Well, and that's what we talk about is teaching kids where their food comes from. That there's no greater lesson than your first foods thing. It's what embodies that. I think it's such a good lesson.
Yeah. And then I'm also thinking too, having the kids involved, being out there, being able to plant stuff, keep the upkeep on it, having it being transferred over to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then, like I'm saying, we have kids in there prepping out. They're prepping the food that they're growing, serving it. And there's that sense of pride for them too.
Yeah, and we do have a website that our Harvest of the Month materials are available for anyone and everyone. And I encourage people to go and explore it, print off the material, share them with your students or your class, or just look at them yourselves. If you go to the BIE.edu website and then you just type in Harvest of the Month in the search, or even if you type in the Indigenous Food Hub, it will bring up the page. And then we have packets for each month. And there's one sheet on kind of like an informational sheet that has fun facts and nutrition facts about the food. There's a recipe. So we had like a venison stew. We had maple syrup popcorn balls. Kind of fun recipes like that. And then the third page is a coloring sheet. So it's, it could be anybody. You could like adults like to color sometimes. And then it also involves the little kids that if they want to be involved, they can color the cute little sweet potato.
Thank you for that. I'll leave a link in the show notes for that.
Awesome.
What's the one thing you want our listeners to know?
I think the call to action for like what I want your listeners to know is that these foods are available and I want more people to engage in these foods and really try them. I think the more that everyone, engages and learns about these foods, then it makes it more available for everybody because like I said, that's a barrier is sometimes just getting these foods. So if everyone's willing to try them and if they like them, then maybe these could be more, foods that are available that everyone can try.
Yes, I agree with that. A goal that I have as well is more first foods all throughout the menu and doing the first foods, the Harvest of the Month, just expands the knowledge of food for the kids as well, to try new things and people live healthier.
I have a big idea question. I'm just struck by, in child nutrition programs, there's a lot of rules and regulations around what a meal looks like. That can be very difficult to replicate at home because it's not necessarily how people eat. And I'm just curious from your perspectives, like if we could rethink school meals and the way we feed kids in educational institutions, what could be some other ways we could think about it? You're a nutritionist, and I'm just really curious.
Well, I think their input, right? Number one, we want more of their input. Like I was actually just on a call recently with like the Farm to School Institute, the Shelby group, and we had a couple of different people there, and they were saying like, the kids don't like school lunch. So I think like Shane is saying, like involving them more, like maybe more formally in menu planning and those sort of things could help. I think like the rule of milk, right? That's always hard for us. Like that milk has to be in every meal. I think for like Indigenous people or even, I think there's a high rate of lactose intolerance. So we do have to provide like lactose free. But I think sometimes like that is sometimes like seems a little cultural or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I would say like just really more input from the students and I think making them feel like that there's an environment for them to share because a lot of them are very tentative to share, even though Shane says, bring your recipe and bring, this, some of them still don't feel like comfortable sharing. So we have to draw that out somehow.
Yeah. I agree with you. So we encourage them to bring a friend or two, if they want to help out. We coordinate a staff for the shift to just watch those group of kids so we can continue on doing what we do in the kitchen. And most of the times the kids come through, and then from there, it's next week they want to try something else, or doing cookies, and like you're saying, the juniper ash cookies, doing cookies on the weekend, which then we can incorporate that into our food hub and stuff like that.
Wonderful.
And then is some of your food program connected, or food activities connected to academics?
Yes, they do have a cooking class on the weekends, and we also have a cooking class, but we only have one student right now. Last year we had 5 or 6, and that's where we would bring them in, and we would set goals like for us at the kitchen, and then also ask them like what is something you would like to learn in the kitchen, or something you'd like to learn, chemical safeties, prepping, salad bar, cooking, not have them write down 3 to 5 ideas that they would like, and then we try to accomplish those, give them a life skill on now they know how to do this, and then also a sense of accomplishment from us knowing we taught somebody something.
Yeah, we do want to have them growing the gardens and stuff. And in science classes, if we can't get the ag classes going, I think if we could do that in science classes, there's a lot of opportunity out there. So eventually, we do want to get there. Yeah. I think the kids are seeing the start of the food hubs. We had one school in New Mexico last year that planted a garden, and then their kitchen staff kept it watered all summer, and then they were able to harvest. They had Navajo squash, Navajo corn, and they were able to then harvest and make a traditional meal in the fall. So I think it's really cool for them to see it go full circle like that.
Yeah. I know Chemawa, their school garden is well on their way too, from what I saw there taking the tours. So,
yep. Broccoli is growing.
Yay. We'd like to thank everybody so much for listening today. And thank you, our wonderful guests, Shane and Casey.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Michelle. I would like to say, if you're ever by Salem, Oregon, stop at Chemawa and have a bowl of elk stew or a bison meatball.
Nice.
All right, good deal.
That sounds so good. Thank you.
Farm to School was written, directed, and produced by Rick Sherman and Michelle Markiston, with the production support from Leanne Locker of Oregon State University. The podcast was made possible by a grant by the United States Department of Agriculture.
The content and ideas on the Farm to School podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Oregon State University, Oregon Department of Education, the Bureau of Indian Education, or the United States Public Health Service, or the United States Department of Agriculture. The USDA, Oregon Department of Education, and Oregon State University are equal opportunity providers and employers.
Do you want to learn more about Farm to School? Check out other episodes, show notes, contact information, and much more by searching Farm to School Podcast OSU.
We'd love to hear from you. Definitely stop by, leave a note, give us an idea for a future podcast. Thanks again, you guys, for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.